The lonely ballroom. The ballroom of the alien palace was filled with lights, music, and laughter. Sparkling glass panels reflected color from 1,000 stars outside. Creatures from many worlds moved together, their gowns flowing like rivers of light. Every step, every turn, was planned to show grace and perfection. In the middle of that grand place, one girl stood alone. She was small compared to the others. Her dress was plain, her eyes lowered. She tried to smile when others looked at her, but they always turned away. No one wanted to stand near her. She was the one everyone rejected. Her name was Lyra. She had been dreaming of this night since she was a child. The Festival of Unity, where beings from across the galaxy met, danced, and formed new bonds. For her, it was supposed to be the moment she was seen, the moment she was no longer forgotten, but reality was cruel. Every time she stepped forward, someone else stepped back. Every time she raised her hand, another dancer looked away. She watched as alien princes spun their partners, as daughters of noble houses laughed behind jeweled masks. She heard whispers, soft but sharp. Why is she even here? She does not belong. Her family must be ashamed. Lyra felt her heart sink deeper. She thought about leaving, but leaving would mean proving them right. She stayed, standing by the tall crystal pillars at the edge of the ballroom. She wanted to disappear, yet she wanted someone, anyone, to see her. And then the music shifted. The orchestra of alien instruments slowed. A new rhythm began, powerful and strange. The crowd moved aside as the master of ceremony announced, "The dance of choice shall begin." It was the most important part of the night. One by one, dancers would choose their partners, and together they would step into the circle. One by one, partners were chosen. A winged noble invited a tall warrior. A scaled empress chose a prince from a distant system. Each pair stepped forward while the crowd cheered. The circle filled with light, but Lyra remained where she was, unchosen, unseen. Her hands shook as she waited. Maybe, just maybe, someone would ask, maybe someone would give her a chance. But as names were called, no one looked her way. Her chest tightened. Every passing second told her the same story, that she was unwanted. Then, a new sound entered the hall. It was not the sound of alien footsteps, but the steady rhythm of boots. The crowd turned, their whispers rising. For the first time in years, a human had walked into the ballroom. He was tall, not as decorated as the others. His suit was simple compared to their flowing garments. His eyes scanned the hall, sharp but curious. Many sneered at him. Humans were seen as lesser, their culture often mocked. "Why is a human even here?" One noble muttered. "Does he think he belongs?" Another hissed. The human ignored them. He stepped forward, his gaze moving past the dancers, past the nobles, until his eyes fell on her, on the girl standing alone by the pillar. His expression softened, and then, to everyone's shock, he walked straight to her. Lyra froze. She thought he must have made a mistake. Maybe he was looking for someone behind her. But no. He stopped in front of her. He extended his hand, steady and firm. "Will you dance with me?" he asked, his voice calm and clear. The hall went silent. The crowd shock was louder than any music. A human choosing her? The one no one else wanted? It was an insult to their order, a challenge to their pride. Yet it was happening before their eyes. Lyra's heart pounded. Her hands trembled. She wanted to say no, to run away, but something in his eyes stopped her. They were not filled with pity, not filled with pride. They simply asked, they simply offered. Slowly, she placed her hand in his fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. The music swelled, and together they stepped into the circle. The whispers exploded. Some laughed, some shouted. "This is a disgrace. A human with her? Unthinkable." The council members at the high table frowned, anger flashing in their eyes. But the human did not look away. He only looked at her, as if she was the only one in the hall. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. For the first time, someone had chosen her. Her steps were shaky, but when the human moved, she followed. The crowd could not look away. The dance had begun, and something new stirred in the air. Lyra felt it deep inside her chest. A spark of courage she had never known. A story was starting in that moment, a story the galaxy would not forget. Whispers of rebellion. The music grew stronger as Lyra and the humans stepped into the circle. All eyes were on them. Not with admiration, but with shock. The other dancers slowed. Some even stopped, for in a hall where tradition ruled for centuries, one small act had broken the silence of order. The whispers began like a breeze, soft but sharp. They passed from one guest to another, from one noble to the next. Unbelievable. One voice hissed, "He chose her." Another gasped, "A human? With her? It is an insult." The alien council sat above on their crystal thrones, their faces tight with anger. They were used to control, used to order. Nothing in this hall ever defied their rules, until now a human, a being they saw as weak and primitive, had chosen the one girl they all despised. Lyra felt the weight of their eyes pressing down on her. She wanted to shrink back into the shadows, but the human's grip on her hand remained steady. He guided her with calm steps, his confidence wrapped around her like a shield. Still, the voices grew louder. They were not just whispers anymore. They were venom dressed as words. "This is rebellion," one noble muttered. "This is shame." Another spat. Some laughed cruelly. Some demanded the dance be stopped. The music faltered as the orchestra looked to the council for orders. But the council gave no signal. They only glared, as if waiting for the human to stumble, waiting for the girl to break. Lyra's chest tightened. She heard every cruel word, every laugh. She wanted to stop, to pull away. Yet when she looked at the human, he was calm. His eyes did not look at the crowd. His eyes looked only at her. "You are not alone," he whispered, his words low, meant only for her ears. Something shifted inside her. For so long she had been alone. For so long no one ever stood by her side. Yet here, in front of the galaxy, this stranger, a human, chose to stand with her. She raised her chin. It was a small act, but it was enough to make the crowd gasp. For the first time, she did not bow her head in shame. She met their eyes, one by one. The whispers turned uneasy. Some were shocked, some furious. Others, deep inside, felt something they could not name. The dance moved faster. Their steps began to flow, not with practiced perfection like the others, but with something stronger. Life. The humans' movements were rough, powerful, unlike the polished style of the nobles. Lyra's steps were soft but graceful. Together, they created a rhythm that belonged to neither tradition nor rule. It was something new, something alive. The crowd could not look away. Their whispers now carried a different tone. "What is this?" one asked. "It is not our way." Another answered, yet in their voices was not only anger, but curiosity. The council leaned forward. Their anger grew with every step, for they knew, deep in their hearts, that rebellion did not always begin with war. Sometimes it began with something as small as a hand offered in kindness, a dance shared in defiance. Lyra's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the song. She felt stronger with every turn, every spin. Her fear was still there, but it no longer chained her. It became fuel. And the human smiled, not at the council, not at the crowd, but at her, as if he already knew, as if he had always known. Then, something strange happened. Among the crowd, a single pair of hands began to clap. It was soft, almost hidden, but soon another joined, and another. The whispers turned into murmurs of support. Not all, but some. The council's eyes burned with fury. They knew what this meant. If more joined, if more dared to support this act, their control would weaken. "Enough," one council member hissed. His voice echoed through the hall. But the music did not stop. The human did not stop. Lyra did not stop. The whispers of rebellion had begun. They moved like fire through dry grass, fast and unstoppable. And in the center of it all, a human and a rejected girl danced as if they owned the stars. The dance that shook the hall. The music thundered louder. The rhythm spread through the floor like a storm. Each beat felt alive, vibrating through glass, metal, and bone in the circle of light. Lyra and the human moved as if nothing else existed, yet everything in the hall was watching them. The nobles who once laughed now stared with wide eyes, their jaws clenched, their hands trembling on jeweled cups. They had seen dances before, flawless, polished, perfect, but never one like this. This was raw, untamed, a human's wildness mixed with an outcast's grace. Lyra's steps no longer shook with fear. Her feet glided with surprising strength. Her eyes glowed with something unspoken. The rejection of years had turned into fire, and beside her, the human matched her every step, his movements sharp, bold, breaking every rule of their culture. Gasps rose from the crowd as he lifted her into the air, not in the elegant style of nobles, but with pure strength. She spun, her plain dress catching light like 1,000 tiny stars. When he set her down, the floor itself seemed to shiver. "This is chaos," one noble shouted, but another voice whispered, "This is beautiful." The council exchanged dark looks. Their claws and hands gripped their armrests. They could feel it. The air had changed. The people were no longer only mocking. Some were enchanted. Some were questioning. And questions were dangerous. The orchestra, caught between fear and awe, stumbled in their rhythm. The alien instruments hissed and clanged. The human did not wait. He began to clap his hands in rhythm, guiding the music himself. The hall froze. No one ever dared to control the sacred music, yet his simple human beat pulled the song back together. The dancers who had been watching from the edges shifted uneasily. Some stopped mid-step. Some lowered their arms. None could deny it. The center of the hall belonged to them now. Lyra's breath came fast. She felt the power of eyes on her. For once, it did not crush her. It lifted her higher. Every spin with the human broke another chain around her soul. Then it happened. The great crystal chandeliers above trembled. The vibrations of their steps shook the very structure. Tiny shards of light fell like glittering rain. The audience gasped. Was it the music or something more? The whispers surged again, but this time they were different. Not only anger, not only mockery, but something deeper, fear. "She is glowing," one voice said. And it was true. Around Lyra's form, a faint shimmer began to rise. Something hidden, something the council did not want seen. Her power, buried by years of shame, was awakening. The council leader slammed his staff on the ground. A wave of silence tried to crush the hall, but it was too late. The dance had already taken root. It had shaken the air, the people, the very stones of the palace. The human spun her one last time, his hand firm on her waist, their steps perfect, not because of training, but because of trust. And when they stopped, the crowd did not breathe. The hall had never been so silent. In that silence, truth became clear. It was not only a dance, it was a storm. It was rebellion made flesh. It was the beginning of something the council could not control. Lyra stood in the circle, her chest heaving, sweat on her brow. Yet she was not the girl who had entered this ballroom. She was no longer invisible, no longer unwanted. And as the whispers grew into waves, she realized she had become something else. A symbol. The dance had shaken the hall, but more than that, it had shaken the galaxy. The council's anger. The silence after the dance was heavier than stone. The crowd did not cheer. They did not clap. They only stared, waiting. Their eyes moved between the girl who once stood forgotten and the human who held her hand. At the far end of the ballroom, the council rose from their crystal seats. Their long cloaks trailed behind them like rivers of shadow. Their eyes burned with fury. For centuries, their word had been law, their rules unchallenged. But tonight, before the galaxy, someone had dared to break them. The council leader, an old alien with skin like carved stone, raised his staff. His voice echoed through the hall. "This is not a dance," he thundered. "This is rebellion." The words fell heavy. Some in the crowd gasped. Others bowed their heads in fear. The nobles who had once whispered now stayed silent, for none dared to speak against the council. Lyra felt her chest tighten. The fire she felt moments ago flickered. She was still only one girl. She was still weak, or so she believed. Her hand trembled in the human's, but his grip was steady, firm, unshaken. The council's anger grew with every second of silence. "You, human," the leader spat. "You dare mock our traditions. You dare shame this hall." His voice cracked like thunder. "You will be punished." The human did not flinch. His calm gaze met theirs. He spoke clearly, his words simple. "I did not mock your dance," he said. "I gave it meaning." The hall erupted. Some gasped at his courage. Some shouted in outrage. The council's faces darkened. Never before had a human spoken with such boldness in their presence. The council leader raised his staff higher. The air grew heavy, crackling with power. The chandeliers above swayed though no wind blew. The floor beneath them trembled. The crowd stepped back, afraid of what was about to come. Lyra's heart raced. She felt the storm building around them. The council's fury was not just words. It was real, dangerous, unstoppable. And yet, when she looked at the human, he was calm. His hand did not release hers. His eyes told her silently, "Do not bow." For the first time, she did not lower her gaze. For the first time, she stood tall beside someone. The council's voices rose together. Their words became commands. "In this, kneel before us, beg forgiveness." Their words were sharp blades thrown across the hall. But Lyra did not kneel. The human did not kneel. And that refusal was louder than any shout. The whispers returned to the crowd. Stronger than before, they defy the council. One said, "They are mad." Another whispered, but beneath the fear, beneath the outrage, something else spread, a spark of admiration. The council felt it, and their anger deepened. They could not allow this spark to live. They could not allow one girl and one human to weaken their hold. The leader's staff glowed with a deep crimson light. Energy pulsed from it, flooding the room. The chandeliers cracked. The crystal floor split. The nobles screamed and stepped back. Yet still, in the center of the storm, Lyra and the human did not move. Her heart screamed with fear, but her body stayed strong. His presence was a shield around her. His courage poured into her veins. For the first time, she did not feel small. For the first time, she felt equal. The council's anger reached its peak. The leader's voice roared. "Then you will be broken before all." His staff struck the ground. A wave of force exploded outward. Tables shattered. Glass burst. The orchestra's instruments fell silent. But in the middle of that blast, the human stepped forward, shielding Lyra with his body. The wave broke against him like water against stone. He staggered, but he did not fall. His arm wrapped around her, and he held her steady. The hall gasped. No one had ever stood against the council's power and remained. Yet a human, a being they all thought weak, had not fallen. The council's fury twisted into disbelief. They whispered among themselves, their voices sharp and fearful. "Impossible. Unnatural. This should not be." And in that moment, Lyra understood. The council was not invincible. Their power was not absolute. They were only strong because everyone believed they were, but belief could change. The girl once rejected, the human once mocked, stood together in defiance. And the council, for the first time in centuries, felt something they had long forgotten: fear. The rising storm, the blast of power faded, yet the hall did not return to silence. Instead, it filled with voices, loud, clashing, unstoppable. Some shouted for order, demanding the council restore control. Others whispered in awe at what they had just seen, a human standing against the council's might, a rejected girl refusing to bow. It was unthinkable, but it had happened before their eyes. The ballroom no longer felt like a place of music and celebration. It felt like the heart of a storm. Lyra stood in the circle, her chest rising and falling, her hands still locked in the human's. Her body shook, but it was not from fear. It was from something stronger, a growing force inside her. The whispers of the crowd reached her ears, every word a knife or a shield. "She dares to defy," one voice cried. "She shines brighter than them," another whispered. The division spread. Nobles who once mocked her now glanced at each other with unease. Some took cautious steps forward, as if pulled by invisible strings. Others turned their backs, furious, demanding her removal. The council roared for silence, their voices heavy with command. But the people no longer listened as they once did. Their eyes were fixed on the girl and the human, not on the thrones above. The storm grew stronger. The human raised his chin. His voice rang clear, louder than the chaos. "Enough, he said, his words cut through the noise. You see her as nothing, but she has stood against your cruelty. She is more than you will ever admit. Gasps filled the air. His boldness was fire thrown into dry grass. The storm caught it, and the flames began to spread. Lyra felt her heart pound. For years she believed she was invisible, but now the galaxy saw her. She was not only seen, she was at the center of a battle she never asked for. Her steps forward felt heavy, but she moved. The crowd parted as she walked. Her plain dress brushed against polished robes and jeweled hems. She felt their eyes burn into her, some with hatred, some with awe. The whispers rose again. She is dangerous. She is hope. The council's fury burned brighter. They saw the cracks forming in their control. They saw the people beginning to question, and they could not allow it. The leader raised his staff once more, but before he could strike, a voice from the crowd interrupted. I will not bow either, said a young alien noble. His voice trembled, but carried strength. He stepped into the open, away from his family. His declaration shook the hall. Gasps echoed again. More voices followed. If she stands, I will stand. The council has ruled too long. Why do we fear them? The storm was no longer whispers. It was lightning. Lyra's chest tightened. She did not understand how or why, but her courage had awakened theirs. The rejection that once crushed her now became her weapon. Her pain had become a spark for others. The council bellowed with rage. Their combined voices thundered across the hall. Silence, or you will all be destroyed. Their power pulsed again, cracking the crystal walls. The chandeliers swung violently. But the people no longer stepped back. Some raised their heads defiantly. Some even stepped closer to the girl and the human. The storm grew louder, until the music of rebellion drowned out the authority of the council. Lyra's hand tightened in the human's. Her voice, though soft, carried across the silence between shouts. They cannot stop us anymore. The human looked at her, his eyes steady. No, he said, they cannot. And with that truth spoken aloud, the storm reached its peak. The ballroom was no longer a place of unity. It was a battlefield of hearts. Some still clung to fear, others to hope. But one thing was clear. Change had begun. And the council, for the first time, was losing the shattered chains. The storm inside the ballroom grew heavier with each passing breath. The council's commands no longer silenced the people. Their voices clashed with rebellion, defiance, and fear. The hall was alive with conflict. But in the middle of it all stood Lyra, her hand still held by the human, her heart beating so fast it felt like it might break free. She had been invisible for so long. Yet now all eyes were on her, and deep inside, something was waking. The council leader slammed his staff to the floor again. The blast of power spread like a tidal wave. The chandeliers shattered fully this time, raining crystal shards onto the marble. The nobles screamed and scattered, but Lyra did not move. Her body glowed faintly, at first like a candle, then brighter. The shards that should have cut her instead circled around her, spinning in the air as if caught in invisible hands. The crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees, whispering in shock. It cannot be, one of the council hissed. She holds the old power, another growled. Lyra's eyes widened. She had never felt this force before, yet it had always been there, buried beneath shame and rejection. Every cruel laugh, every mocking word had pushed it deeper, chained it tighter. But now those chains were breaking, one by one. The human looked at her with calm certainty, as if he had expected this. His voice was steady. Do not fear it, he whispered. It is yours. Her breath shook, but I don't know how. Then let it be what it is, he said. The council roared in fury. Their combined powers surged again, bolts of energy crashing down like lightning. But before they could reach her, the glowing shards around Lyra shot outward, forming a shield. The blasts hit the barrier and dissolved into harmless sparks. The hall fell silent in awe. The council themselves stepped back. The people watched with wide eyes. The whispers grew again, louder, unstoppable. She is chosen. She is stronger than them. The council is afraid. And indeed, the council was afraid. Their authority had been built on the belief that no one could resist them. But this girl, the one they all had rejected, was resisting without bowing, without breaking. The light around her grew brighter, spreading across the cracks in the crystal floor. The marble tiles trembled. The grand pillars that had stood for centuries groaned. The palace itself was responding to her awakening. Lyra felt the power flow through her veins, hot and endless. It was terrifying, but it was hers for the first time. She understood. She had never been powerless. She had only been chained by their lies. The chain shattered. One final pulse of energy erupted from her. The walls shook. Tapestries ripped free. The grand banners of the council tore from their poles and burned with silver flame. The hall of order and control was collapsing under the weight of truth. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some fled in terror. Others knelt in reverence. And still more raised their voices in open rebellion. The storm that began as whispers had become a hurricane. The council's voices cracked with desperation. Stop her. She is dangerous. Destroy her before it is too late. Their anger was now laced with fear. Their once perfect authority was slipping through their fingers. But Lyra no longer trembled. She stood tall, her dress glowing like fire, her eyes burning with strength. She raised her hand, and the shards of crystal obeyed, swirling around her like a crown. The human stood at her side, his expression calm, proud. He did not guide her anymore. He only stood with her for now. It was her choice, her moment. She looked at the council. Her voice was steady, clear, carried by power. You call me nothing, she said, but I was never nothing. Her words rippled through the hall, striking harder than any blast. The people felt it in their bones. The storm inside their hearts broke free. Shouts of rebellion rose like thunder. The council's illusions had shattered. The chains of fear had broken. And at the center of it all stood the girl they had cast aside, now shining brighter than any crown. The choice of the galaxy. The ballroom was no longer a place of beauty. It had become a battlefield of light and shadow. The banners of the council lay in ashes. The crystal floor cracked. The chandeliers shattered. In the middle of the ruins stood Lyra, her body glowing with untamed power. And beside her stood the human, steady, unbroken. The council, shaken but still standing, raised their staffs again. Their fury shook the air, yet behind that fury was something none had seen from them before. Fear. Seize them, the council leader roared. His voice cracked like a dying storm. Destroy them before this spreads. But the command did not land as it once would. The guards hesitated. The nobles did not move. Even the orchestra players froze, for their eyes were not on the council anymore. They were on Lyra. The people whispered among themselves, their voices louder than the council's orders. She shines brighter than their throne. She stood when all of us bowed. She is proof they're not gods. The council realized with horror that their authority was crumbling not by force, but by belief. A single human hand offered in kindness had undone centuries of control. The leader tried once more, his staff glowing crimson. You are dangerous, he hissed at Lyra. You will destroy everything. Lyra stepped forward. The glow around her flickered but did not fade. Her voice, though soft, carried across the hall. I was nothing to you, she said, but I was never nothing. You feared what I could be, so you chained me. You silenced me. You rejected me. The crowd hung on every word. But look now, she said, her eyes sweeping across the galaxy's nobles and leaders. I am not alone. I was never alone. And if you try to break me again, you will not just fight me, you will fight all who refuse your chains. Her words cut deeper than any blade. The storm inside the people broke open. Shouts of defiance rose, louder, stronger, hundreds of voices against the few thrones. The council stepped back. For the first time in centuries, they were not obeyed. The human squeezed her hand gently. His voice was low, meant for her alone. You changed everything. Lyra's eyes glistened. For so long she thought she was invisible, worthless, forgotten, but now she stood not as a shadow, but as a light. The hall trembled once more. not from the council's fury, but from the will of the people. They rose from their seats, some kneeling to her, some raising their fists. The galaxy itself was watching. The council faced their choice. They could strike her down and risk rebellion spreading through every world, or they could accept that their era of fear had ended. The leader's staff trembled in his hand. His voice, once thunder, cracked into a whisper. This cannot be. But it was. Lyra raised her chin. Her voice was clear. The galaxy chooses now. And the galaxy answered. The crowd roared together, a sound that shook the pillars of the palace. Their voices merged into one, defying the council, standing with her. The storm had reached its end. The chains had shattered. The old order was broken. The council lowered their staffs, their faces pale with defeat. They had lost, not only their power, but their fear. In the ruins of the ballroom, under broken chandeliers and fallen banners, Lyra and the humans stood hand in hand. For the first time, she did not feel rejected. For the first time, she felt whole. The galaxy had seen, the galaxy had chosen, and everything would change forever.